All right. Welcome once again to the postseason edition of Under the Dome. This is now the divisional round of the 2017 season, 2018 playoffs. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, here with my partner, Sean Williams, who is doing a mic check right now. Check, 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 check. It sounds like you're throwing some. It sounds like you're throwing down some beats right there. Welcome, everybody. We had a very exciting game this past Sunday night, talking about next weekend already. Had a very exciting game Sunday night, the best playoff game, and I'm a little biased, of the four this weekend. And if your hearts can take it, we're going to have another stress-filled playoff game Sunday night, once again with the last game against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. I don't know about you guys, but this is going to be the toughest game that we played all season. I thoroughly believe whoever wins this game Sunday is going all the way to the Super Bowl. I don't think either team that's playing in Philadelphia this Saturday is going to the Super Bowl. Well, is going to win the Super Bowl. In fact, I don't think they're even going to the Super Bowl. I think the winner of the Minnesota Saints game is the one that's going to go there and win it all. Because just the NFC is like the NBA West. The NFC is a much, much stronger conference than the AFC. Because really, if you watch that game that set football back a century or so, Buffalo versus Jacksonville, where I've watched high school kids at the Special Olympics play quarterback better than those two. I'm sorry. That's not to make fun of, people with disabilities or special needs kids. That's just to demonstrate how uncoordinated and poor of a job Blake Bortles and Tyrod Rain. Oh, I can't even say his name right now. Please help me, Taylor. Number 5 for the Bills.
Taylor.
Yes, I cannot say his first name. Played the position. I mean, missing wide open targets. And Tony Romo's in pain trying to explain this game. And like, oh, he just misses. Oh, he's just got to get something going. Oh, he's just got to, it's like, no. This is just two horrible quarterbacks. It's like watching, I don't know, quadriplegics have a pillow fight with holding a pillow between their teeth. I mean, it was horrible. And then, the Falcons ought to be thankful that I don't buy the argument that playoff experience matters, but I'll tell you what, if you're trying to convince me, the Rams' performance on Saturday night is a great exhibit A, because I've never seen the Rams look that. I don't want to say the word unprepared, because I think that Sean McVay is probably your coach of the year.
Sure.
But I thought they looked horribly unprepared for that game. I
did pick the Atlanta Falcons to beat the Rams. You and I have had this conversation before. Mm-hmm. When I was a player, I believe firmly that there is absolutely no substitute whatsoever, no matter what level. Part of the season that you're playing on, there's no substitute for experience.
Mm-hmm.
That was exemplified in Los Angeles because for all their brash, for all their bravado, for all those Rams season was this year, not follow through on it. And going into that game, and please understand that I'm going to try to say this without throwing up. Going into that game, they were the more experienced team. The Rams, you're talking about a team, head coach, and your quarterback. That makes a difference. That go home type of mentality. The third play of the game that you call in the fourth quarter, if it's a one possession game, that's kind of what we saw exemplified there in Los Angeles.
I mean, to have Farrell Cooper fumble not just one but two kick returns, giving the Falcons, basically spotting the Falcons 13 points in the first half and be down 13-0. That was the kind of thing, and you saw that tightness in the offense too. They were trying to get things working. It was almost like he was trying too hard to be relaxed, and they just were not executing at all because they're a much more talented team than that. And, and I've seen this happen in other games. I've seen, go back all the way back to Super Bowl 15 with the Eagles and the Raiders, and the Eagles were played that same kind of game where they were tight. They made a lot of mistakes. They were just inches away from making a play, and that's the difference between, the Raiders winning and them winning. You saw that kind of stuff in that if you ever watched the Super Bowl highlights for that game. And I think that's what you saw with the Rams. And so that was probably the most disappointing game. The no shocker game was the Chiefs once again losing in the playoffs, this time to the Titans, which, the Titans really, they're like the Bills and the Jaguars. Jaguars have a good defense. I have to give them that. But much like the Bills, they are just, you got to have two more teams in there for a wild card. So who rises above the trash pile? And in this case, the teams that rose above the trash pile are Buffalo and Tennessee. And, the Chiefs come out just like the Kansas City Chiefs always do. No, I'm talking about the Chiefs-Titans game. The Chiefs come out the way they always do, and they jump on a team early, and they build this 21-3 lead, and then just watch it. I saw a video today. They call it read away. They watched Andy Reid just piss the game away. Don't let the running back Hill get many carries. I think he had 11 total in the whole second half. Throw the ball all the time. All the things that worked, don't do. And leave your defense out there the whole time, and just keep giving Tennessee opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to win the game. And eventually they're going to. And so, that leads us, I guess, to our game, which we played Sunday night, and we were talking about how hard it is to beat a team a third time, but especially a divisional foe. But, even though the record is 11-5, I think.
11-6.
11-6. Okay, about beating a team 3 times in a season. I like the matchup because I thought we matched up well with Carolina. The difference in this game compared to the previous 2 games is a relatively healthy Greg Olsen, and B, we got the good Cam Newton. I kept saying we got to keep Cam in the pocket, don't let him run around, and he'll get inaccurate throwing the ball and stuff like that. Well, in that first drive where he throws that pass, and it should have been a touchdown pass, and the receiver drops it, and they end up getting no points because they missed the field goal. That told you right there the good Cam is going to play this game. And he played the whole 60 minutes, the good Cam.
Before we get further into this, let me pay the bills real quick.
Yeah, I forgot all about that. Just talking away, and people like, oh my God, this guy never shuts up.
We want to thank Fan First Productions for being our sponsor. And thank you for coming to New Orleans Sunday. We want to invite everyone to subscribe to our podcast both on iTunes and YouTube. On a personal note, I want to thank Santoria Black, Talk 97.7 here locally, for having me on his show last night. The man, he's a legend here where we are, and I thank him to recap the game. And just, if you guys will allow me one more. Yesterday, for those who do not know, yesterday I cracked a century in half, and it was my 50th birthday, and I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone that took the time out of their busy lives and schedules and wished me a happy birthday, sent me all the messages, both appropriate and inappropriate, I might add. But hey, you're only 50 once, right?
There you go.
I want to thank everyone that took the time to think of me. That meant more to me than you guys will ever know. And also, last but certainly not least, thank the New Orleans Saints for starting my birthday off right early on Sunday with this win. Was that me?
No, that's not you.
Oh,
that's my dog.
Good, because I don't normally make that sound. I was just concerned. Yeah, as you alluded to, the Carolina Panthers have lost. They'll end their season at 11-6 now, and when you think about, and Joey and Tony, please forgive me. Looking back on it, winds up being 11-6, and half of their losses were to us, and I take a great deal of pride in that. I consider them to be like public enemy number one, but because they're a division foe. And when you can beat a division foe one time in the season, sweep a team in your division with 2 victories, that's major. When you can advance yourself in the playoffs over a division opponent, that's incredible. What we did on Sunday.
Yes, it is. I posted my good, bad, and ugly. It was obvious that the Panthers looked at the game film and decided that whatever they were going to do, and this is what Joey was talking about when he was our guest when we had him on right before the regular season game in the Dome against the Panthers. They decided they were not going to let Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara beat them with the running game. They picked their poison, and their poison was, if you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us with Drew Brees throwing the ball around. And like I said in my good, bad, and ugly, when Sean Payton and Drew Brees saw that was the defensive game plan, they looked at each other and smiled and went, well, all right then, let's go. And
watch this.
Yeah, because what happened? Second play in the second drive, 80-yard bomb to Ted Ginn. Next series, we got another big pass play. Next series, got another big pass play. We're up 21-3 before they even realize, or 21-6 before they even realize it. We are throwing the ball all over the place, and we are challenging that Panther secondary. And they stubbornly refused to drop 7 guys out of the box. They just wanted to put those defensive backs on an island, and then they started blitzing. And you blitz Breeze when he has good protection. That is what in basketball they call the shooter's shooters defense. You are now allowing the shooters in basketball to start jacking up threes, and that's exactly what Breeze was doing basically. It was just one impressive throw after another. And let me just say, Josh Hill, for all the criticisms I had of Josh Hill over the years, he had a Graham-like catch. I don't know if you remember this or not. Over the right into the red zone, over the middle, right on the seam, where he just reached and plucked it right up above the defensive back's head. And it was almost like a back shoulder pass because he was running him to turn and get it and then pull it in. That is the kind of catch we've been missing from the tight end position for really since Graham left. I mean, we've had a couple scenes of it, with Fleener and Watson, but not on that consistent basis like we used to get with Jimmy Graham. And then he got the second touchdown pass to make it 14 when he was just wide open. They totally let him go because they jumped all the underneath routes. So it was just the kind of game that we needed to see. We kept saying was going to happen one day, and it finally did in the playoffs. And I think we're going to need to see more of that in Minnesota.
I agree. To be honest with you, we have a lot of fun here lately at the expense of our division opponents, both Atlanta and Carolina and Tampa as well. But I would, in all honesty, I really want to say this in all sincerity. I was absolutely blown away at the effort that the Carolina Panthers brought to bear New Orleans Saints on Sunday. Defensively, they could have played a better game, short of having different players in the secondary. I really don't. The calling card for the New Orleans Saints this entire season has been Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. And they absolutely took that away from the New Orleans Saints. I want to say 40 or 50 yards on the ground between the two of them. And they took that away from them, and they put the ball in the old man's hands. And if you look at the averages, the law of averages says that with a 38-year-old quarterback, if you hands, as the saying goes, and say, okay, if you're going to beat us, the old man's going to have to do it. The law of averages is probably on your side in that equation. I don't have the figures to back that up, obviously, but at the same time, Drew came through with like performance, and he home much like he always has done. But I think maybe what hit in the performance of Drew Brees, something that was maybe overly overlooked, was the performance of the defense. If you look at the time of possession in that game, there is a discrepancy of, I want to say, between 7 and 8 minutes. I'm not certain on that. It's either between 6 or 7 or 7 and 8 minutes that you not only had to have your defense on the field, but you had to have your defense on the field defending a quarterback like Cam Newton. And, people can say what they want about Newton as a quarterback, and I don't think that he is ever going to be confused with Tom Brady or Peyton Manning. But on Sunday, Cam Newton was spot on. I don't know, short of sacked a couple of times maybe, I don't know how his effort could have been improved very much at all. he had a touchdown pass that was dropped. If you look outside of Olsen, that number 12, I forget his name. Please forgive me. That number 12 that he had playing wide receiver that dropped the touchdown, that kid's shows a lot of promise, but he's young and he's inexperienced, and he's going to have time to mature in this game. But outside of Olsen and McCaffrey, who I feel safe in saying that McCaffrey finally had that game where he came into his own. Of course, I'm not a regular Carolina Panthers watcher, so that may have already occurred, and I just didn't realize it. But Carolina brought their A game, and we were fortunate enough that we escaped it with it this time. I going in, it was a division game. The third time that we had played this same team this season, I had a feeling that it was going to be close. It was going to come down to probably a game, one way or the other. Now, I didn't even remotely consider leading up to it that it was going to defibrillator before it was over. But yeah, I kind of figured that it was going to be close going in. And it absolutely was. And that there's no hope left at all. The guy that, if I was to pick a most valuable player on this team, the guy that rises to the top, tone that exemplifies everything that you want this team to be on this season, steps forward and tackles not only Cam Newton but also Von Bell at the same time.
Well, he forced the intentional grounding, which was the critical play of that drive. Here's the thing. When it was 31-19, I felt confident. I felt comfortable, okay. Touchdown, Greg Olsen, but we've got this game in control. We're going to be able to move the ball enough to run up the clock. And we couldn't run the football. And that was concerning at the end of the game where you couldn't run the football anymore. Or at all. You were still having the same problems you were having in the beginning of the game. You weren't extending drives. The fourth down call, which I like the decision. I don't like the execution of the play. Because if you get a first down there, Carolina's already burned all the timeouts. You can take 3 knees and pretty much end the ball game. Okay, so I have no problem with going for it on fourth down there. I know some people the smart play is you punt them, you pin them deep. But again, as I explained that good, bad, and ugly, I carry the scars of a lot of Saints games. And yes, it's a different situation because you're up already. You're up by 5. They need a touchdown to win. If you don't get the first down, they take over at midfield, and it's that much easier for them to score. They don't go 50 yards instead of 80 yards. My concern is, like I said, in the 83 game, Bum Phillips didn't go for the win. He went for the smart play, the more conservative play. We'll punt the ball, pin them deep. They haven't been able to move the ball. I'm talking about the Rams game from 1983, last game of the season. The smart play is to punt the ball, pin them deep. They haven't been able to move the ball against your defense all day. They're not going to be able to do it now. No timeouts, end of the game. And they were able to do it. Instead of kicking the field goal, going for the win, risking the fact that if you miss, they have a shorter field to go. Ralph Marlborough said it best. He said, if you're going to praise Sean Payton for ambush and doing decisions like that, being aggressive like that, you cannot be critical then if he's aggressive and it doesn't work out. Because that's just how the Saints are built. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to blitz. Coaches don't blitz quarterbacks on fourth down, but the Saints did it, and it worked because Von Bell timed that blitz perfectly. It didn't work in 2011, and they get a big play out of it. The 49ers get a big play out of it, and ultimately helped them win the game. That's the kinds of things that the Saints are going to do. That's their personality. That's their nature. So I get it. I like the call. I just did not like the execution. I did not like the play they ran. I heard, Andrew Juge and Ralph Marlborough talk about this earlier. Probably a better decision would have been to not take that timeout. Make the decision that you're going to go for it, but pretend like you're going to, just try and draw them off sides, wait to the last possible second, then suddenly snap it and do a quarterback sneak with the whole pile moving forward, because the defense is going to think, okay, they're waiting. They're not going. Hold your water, they used to say, hold your water. And then all of a sudden you go and you maybe can get those 2 extra yards because you've got the defense, not attacking. They're trying to stay still. That probably would have been a better call. That probably would have been a better play. That is a quibble, and thank God they intercepted the ball, so it ended up being like a short punt. They lost 16 yards when you have no timeouts and you're fighting for every single yard. Yeah, that's tough. The other thing,
a lot of people relive that fourth down call, and I'm sorry to.
No, go ahead.
There's been, and I've heard one thing and then another, and then back and forth. With you, with that disparity that we were discussing earlier in the time of possession, our defense had been on the field a long time.
Yeah.
I alluded to a moment ago, when your defense is on the field for that long again, and it's not just being on the field, you're having to defend a quarterback the caliber of Cam Newton a lot out of your defense. And you're getting down to stop or come back later. It's stop. Your season is over.
Yeah.
Why Peyton made the call that he did, why he chose the route that he did. And I will not make an argument against that. Were it me, I would have put Morstead on the field and had him fix it to where grass between Cam Newton is humanly possible for him to squeeze out. Morstead is an incredible weapon. Why not? But if you break it down to the simplest terms, weapon that the Saints have, put the ball in his hands and let him make the punt that he did.
Well, I get it. I get the decision, but at the same time, I like the call. I just wish they would have run a better play. It was obvious this would be a quick slant to Michael Thomas. They dropped off in the coverage to bracket him, so Breeze didn't have the look, and he really had nothing else to go to after Thomas. So it was just not. It was not a good play. And then again, as Andrew Juge pointed out, you've already taken the timeout, so now they know you're going to go for it. Okay, because you can't call back-to-back timeouts. So they are better prepared to push back and run a defense against that. Again, hindsight's 20/20. If the play works, it's a brilliant, gutsy move. You kept Cam from never touching the ball ever again, but it didn't work. We lucked out with a lot of things that went right because of the way the defense played. Cam Newton forcing that on Cam Jordan forcing Cam Newton to throw that intentional grounding, which not only gave you a loss of down for the yardage, like a sack, but also a 10-second runoff, which the officials almost forgot. The officials in New York had to call that in to tell them a 10-second runoff. And I know they've been bitching about that in Carolina. In fact, I got an argument with a guy on Twitter about it because Brian Baldinger showed the video of how Cam Newton caused that intentional grounding with a swim move on the tackle. Cam is called the speed bump. No, what did he call him? Something McBump, Speedy McBump, or something like that. He called that tackle, and then you had Christian McCaffrey try and block him, which that's forward. That wasn't happening, and he just ran right through him, and Cam panicked, threw the ball, and the angle that Baldy had was from essentially Cam's point of view. It's taken right above and behind Cam, so you can see what he's pretty much looking at. And I think you can kind of see Funches off in the distance, but he's like here, and the ball goes here. So you can't, he's in the area the same way Drew Brees was in the area. It's just not,
They were in the Superdome.
So it was in the field. So yeah, everyone's in the area. Real receiver was in the area at all. He completely threw the ball out of bounds because he had thought he had got outside the tackle box, but he didn't, because you can see the line, even though Baldy didn't draw it, you can see from the snap of the play the field color differences. You can see where the line was, and he never gets outside the box. So it was a clear intentional grounding.
I watched the talk shows on the NFL Network the morning after, and they, as they usually do, they show that that's and the lines from the tackle's back, and he was absolutely in the tackle box. Yeah. And you have to get the ball beyond the line of scrimmage, and you also outside of the tackle box for it to be legal. And you can't have one without the other. It's got to be the both. And he absolutely was not. So
it's a pointless argument, but it's just something they wanted to hang their hat on, because worse than the intentional grounding was the 10-second runoff when you have no time.
Sure.
The officials so long to get that right that Carolina essentially did have a timeout, a free timeout, because they had to stop the clock to call the penalty. Then they line up. Forget about the 10-second runoff. Start the next play when the official from New York, who's on the sideline, the representative that's on the sideline, gets the call from New York. Hey, it's supposed to be a 10-second runoff. Again, then says there'll be a 10-second runoff. Carolina goes back to the line. Then they start the clock. So that was like a timeout. They had a lot of time there. You can't. It's not just the intentional grounding that killed you, because then, of course, the next play is the huge sack by Von Bell.
Be totally honest with you, if it wasn't for the lighting in the Superdome and Delvin Funches losing that ball much the same way as Delvin Breaux did in that game during his rookie season, if Delvin Funches doesn't lose that ball in the lights, it's over.
Well, yeah, but here's the play that killed me, was the Christian McCaffrey play. A couple times I saw some confusion in the secondary. Greg Olsen just got wide open, which was inexcusable. But the Christian McCaffrey play was the play that kind of, if we would have lost that game, that was a turning point in the game.
Sure.
Because you're up 31-19. We just have to be able to run the ball, run the clock out. We weren't able to do that. And that's part of the two things that I'm going to talk about at the end of the game, end of the show. Three things that have to be fixed, or we have to do a better job of, to win in Minnesota. One of them is we have to get back to being much more and much better communicating our secondary responsibilities. There was too often you saw people passing guys off like they're thinking it's a zone, and it really was man, and nobody picked up the person that they passed off.
Yeah.
And as a result, they're a wide open target. You can't do that in Minnesota.
No.
You can't. You've got much better receivers in Minnesota than you have that you had against Carolina. Now, I did hear that in some ways the noise from the fans was so loud for the defense. The defense was having a hard time communicating. I'll accept that argument or that excuse, but do you think it's not going to be any better when you go to Minnesota? They're going to be just as loud. So, you've got to do a better job. So you can't have that happen. And then to have Christian McCaffrey get out like that, and that really should have been Von Bell's responsibility. I believe he's the safety that was dropping down. I don't think it was Raphael Bush. But Von Bell misses him, and then it was Craig Robertson who ended up looking like the GOAT, because it looks like Craig Robertson was in coverage, and he really wasn't. He's in a trail position chasing Christian McCaffrey. It just didn't happen. You're not going to catch him. And to me, you can't allow big plays like that. You had to make Carolina work for all their points. You talk about time possession before. I had no problem with the time possession from the standpoint of Carolina's driving, settling for field goals.
Yes.
We're getting touchdowns.
Yes.
And they're driving, burning up a lot of clock, burning up a lot of time, but settling for field goals. I'll trade touchdowns to field goals all day.
Absolutely.
I have no problem with that. But if you're going to do that, then you cannot allow the splash plays. You can't allow those big chunk plays to happen. And that's what they did. They allowed too many chunk plays to Greg Olsen, and they allowed that huge play to Christian McCaffrey. You don't allow those two plays, or you allow just one of the two. It's a totally different reaction you have to the feeling of that game. You're not losing by 5. Not winning by 5. You're winning by 12, or you're winning by, I don't know. It was 31-19. That's what? 6.7 points. 31-19. I got to do my math real quick. They didn't tell me to be math on this show.
That's right.
9 point. Yeah.
That contract, dude.
Mm-hmm. You're winning by 9, I think it was. Anyway, but the point is, no, you're winning by 12. You win by 12. What am I thinking? It is 12. Anyway, you have a much better feeling in that game. You felt like the Saints were in control, even though they lost the third down conversion rate. They lost the time possession. They may have lost even total yardage. You still felt like the Saints were in control, and the Panthers were never going to be able to get into the end zone.
Well, yeah.
And that's
as the thing that you got to look at when it comes down to that in this type of game is the fact that investing all of this time of possession into these drives, and as you alluded to a moment ago, all of this in 3-point drives, 3-point drives, 3-point right drives, and the Saints were going down, cashing in touchdown, cashing in touchdown, cashing in touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
and that made a difference. But, you know, along with that comes what I'm saying, it lob the head off. Don't let them keep hanging around. And to be honest, that's the same way that I felt the last game that the Saints played the Panthers. I Dome as well. The Josh Hill fumble just before halftime. Let these guys just keep hanging around.
Yeah.
In the postseason, that mindset is magnified by the fact that if you let these people there's a reason that they are still playing and these other teams are not.
Right. Well,
let these quality and talented teams continue to hang around, and they're going to make you pay.
Yeah.
And that's something that I feel like we have to address and before Minnesota.
You know, it is a divisional foe. They know you very well. They know what your tendencies are. They know what you like to do. So they are going to hang around a lot more than, say, a Jets team, a Bears team. Vikings are different. Vikings, you know, they're much more talented. As far as a team where you are physically roster side by, and you are the more talented team. Whenever it's a divisional game, out the window because they know what you like to do. They play you twice. They've seen everything you've done, and that was the thing you saw in this game. The reason why we couldn't beat them the same way we beat them before is because now they know. Okay, they like to go to Kamara here. They like to go to Kamara there. We're going to swarm Kamara every time, or we're going to swarm Ingram every time. You know, I don't think the Vikings will be able to do that as easily. I think they will come after the run, and they're going to try and play that game where we're not going to let Ingram Kamara beat us. We're going to make Drew Brees beat us, because in the Vikings case, they will say, we think our secondary of Terrence Newman and Xavier Rhodes is better than the secondary Carolina gave you. And we also think offensively, our receiving core of, Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen and Kyle Rudolph is much better than the receiving core of, I think it's Gase, Funches, and Olsen. They will have that attitude. So their attitude is, we can match you offensively and defensively, and we should be able to win those battles. So that'll lead later on in a few minutes. We'll talk about, the three keys to beating the Vikings, which I think we need to do. But we want to give out game balls, right?
Sure.
Who would you want to give your game balls to?
First and foremost,
for the Panthers game. Mm-hmm.
Honestly, my first, people are going to think this is just hokey as hell, but I'm going to do it anyway. My very first game ball, and we're going to do this chronologically, I guess you could say.
Okay.
My first game ball goes to Reggie Bush.
Okay.
Why
so?
The class that he showed, not only by making the trip back, but coming out to lead the Who Dat chant wearing Will Smith's colors.
Yeah.
I think that was nothing less than the classiest thing that he possibly could have done. And to share that game ball with the entire Super Bowl 44 team that showed up. Marcus Colston,
Scott
Fujita,
Scott Shanley,
and all the rest of them.
Mike McKenzie. It was a lot. Jeremy Shockey. It was a lot of guys there. A lot of guys. Lance Moore. A lot of guys.
Lance Moore got the biggest ovation of anybody there, except here.
Yeah. I think Robert Meacham was there as well. So yeah, it was an all-star group. It was an all-star group.
Those guys get my game ball because don't seem to grasp the reality of is to people like us. This is entertainment. Teams, we love following our teams. We love colors and all this and all that, but to those guys that are out there in this game, this is a business, and they will be playing here this year. They'll be playing here next year. It's all about getting paid. Nowadays, more than ever, it's easy to follow that money trail to wherever it leads you. You have a small market team, as people call the Saints. You have that small market team. It's real easy to forget that you were here. But to the fan base of any team that makes it to the pinnacle of the league, Super Bowl, that's major. And for these guys to honor the fans that supported them the way that they did in that 2009 season, I think that was commendable.
Yeah, here's the thing. Two things. Number one, I've read and I've heard championship teams say this before. You've done that championship walk together. That team will forever be together. And you saw that again, that 2009 team. And the second thing is, the Saints and the Packers are the only two teams in the entire NFL who have a personal Hall of Fame. And you look at the Packers, and of course that was Titletown, Lombardi, all that. The Saints don't have that kind of history. In fact, the Saints have a history where people just go, really? A Hall of Fame for the Saints? But Sean Payton has kind of turned that feeling around, not only by making the Saints a more successful team, but also he is embracing the good players of those past era teams. He wants to. They've got photos now, action photos of past players. The George Rogers, the Dome Patrol, the Dalton Hilliard, even going back in the 70s, the Archie Mannings, Chuck Muncie's, the Derlin Moores and the Rich Martys and all those guys. They're embracing that history of the Saints, the Danny Abramowitz, if you want to go back to the 60s, by naming sections of the building after them, the training facility after them. So, you're seeing what he's trying to create by doing this too, is creating the sense of community. And you're seeing that show up in these players that want to come back or still say, hey, I may have ended up finishing my career in Washington. Or I may have ended up finishing my career in Cleveland, like Scott Fujita. Or I may have ended up finishing my career, not the way I wanted to. Say like Jeremy Shockey, where he basically got pushed out the door and he ended up in Carolina. I'm still a Saints player. I'm still a Saints fan, and I embrace because who the fans are and the way the city embraces this football team. It's unlike a city like Atlanta, which is much more transient, where, you have far more bandwagon fans. The more corporate kind of world like you have in the Dallas Cowboys or the New York Giants and things like that. You have much more of almost of a college nature. And the only other cities that have that kind of fan base, that kind of college kind of fan base, is Kansas City, Green Bay, Buffalo, those small market teams. That's not to diminish, say, the Browns and the Dog Pound, or the Raiders and the Black Hole, or even the Jets and Fireman Ed, that kind of stuff. It's just the success of the Saints really affects the mood of this city. And you are seeing it once again, now that we're in the playoffs, that you didn't see in previous years, but you did get a huge feeling of back in 2009 when we went to the Super Bowl, where people just, everything's, how about them Saints? Let's talk about them Saints, and then it's Black and Gold Friday and people wearing jerseys to work and things like that. You don't really get that in a city like Houston or a city like Pittsburgh. Well, maybe you might in Pittsburgh, but, you don't get that in a lot of big cities because spread out and things. And the Saints play, and this I'm really rambling right now, but the Saints players feel that. That's why they say, "My heart, a Saints player. I will always be a Saints player." And they come back for these alumni reunions, and they come back to stay in the Hall of, sign autographs in the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. Because they can feel the passion that fans have towards the city and the team. So that matters a lot to them. My game balls, real quick, we would give out 3 of them, and these are probably the same ones you can give out outside of the alumni returning. Obviously Drew Brees gets a game ball, because we needed him to step up, and boy, did he. Drew Brees showed off that, hey, I can still carry this team if I have to carry this team. You're going to try and take away the run. That's fine. I'm going to come kill you with the pass. So Drew, of course, gets it. I think his passer rating was like 115, 70% completion percentage, all that. Just totally impressive. The other ones I give it out to is,
if I remember correctly, of course, I was experiencing heart palpitations at the time, but he had a perfect 158.3 passer rating until his punt in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was 23 or 33. He was just dead on. And the most impressive play to me, and I posted this in the group, on Facebook yesterday. 8 years old, rolling out, throwing the ball on the run, over 20 yards, dead on target to Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas takes it all the way down inside the 5. People were just having a discussion not long ago. Well, is Drew Brees really starting to show his age? Is he declining a little bit? We're not throwing the ball as much and all these other things. And no, he made that throw in 2006. He made it in 2009. He made it in 2011. He's making it in 2017. In his case, it's just a number. There is no decline. I'm not seeing a drop off in arm strength. I'm not seeing a drop off in accuracy for sure. And I'm certainly not seeing a drop off in his mobility. He was just as mobile then as he was in 2009.
I saw a graphic earlier today on NFL Mobile that for all of their shortcomings, and make no mistake about it, in my mind, the greatest concern moving forward, going towards Minnesota, the biggest concern is offensive line depth, because we lost Pete with a broken leg on Sunday. Kelameet moving in to Pete's position, which that's a small drop in experience and quality of play.
He's been playing that position most of the season anyway because of injuries to Armstead and Pete kicking out the tackle. So it's not that bad.
And we have also, give me the name, Deribius.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Laribus. Yes.
Smith and Bob and Sam. Anyway, we have those two guys, but from that point, we're in roses, baby, on the offensive line. And you're talking about, without a doubt, the most physical position on the field when you talk about the offensive or defensive line.
Well, one of my keys to winning against the Vikings is the Saints offensive line being able to impose their will on the Vikings defensive line, and the Saints defensive line being able to impose their will on the Vikings offensive line, because I think that's where this game's going to be won is. And with Pete gone with a broken leg, you've lost really your backup left tackle. And that's the scary part, because if Clemente went down, but Pete was still on the field, you could put Josh Laribas in there at guard and not really suffer that much of a drop-off. You'd suffer a little bit because you've dropped, now in your third tackle and third guard. But if Armstead goes down, now we're in trouble. Because if Armstead goes down, now we're talking about Clemente kicking out to left tackle, and Laribas coming in at guard. And I'm sorry, Clemente and Laribas protecting Drew's blind side is a scary thought compared to Armstead and Pete. So, that's where I'm really nervous. If, can stay healthy, which that's a big if, because he's missed a lot of time. But if Armstead can stay healthy, then we're okay with Clemente at guard, because he's been playing guard so much. And Armstead is so good, and Unger is so good, that you really hide Clemente's flaws. He's not as physical as Pete. He's not as quick as Pete, because Pete's an animal. Pete gets out there at guard and just flattens people. Clemente's not going to flatten you, but he's going to get the hole open for the running game. That's what has to happen, though. We have to be able to move. The offensive line has to be able to move the line of scrimmage into the Vikings defensive line for the running backs to get some lanes, to find some daylight, to get to that second level. And if we can run the football against the Vikings, then we're talking about a much better game for the Saints to play. In the Carolina game, we avoided a lot of third down problems, our third down bugaboo, by avoiding third down entirely, picking up first downs and big chunk plays. You're not going to be able to do that consistently against the Vikings. You might be able to do it for a drive or two, but you're not going to be able to do that consistently against the Vikings. So the only way you can be successful now is to be able to run the football, so we stay out of we don't fall behind in the down and distance. We're not in third and long or second and long consistently, where the Vikings can dictate what kind of defense they're going to play, because they know we're going to have to throw the football. So we need to have that happen. And the other thing is, when we do throw the football, Drew Brees has to be Drew Brees. He has to be incredibly accurate, razor sharp, throwing receivers open, and receivers have to catch the ball and protect the football. Coleman, keep that ball high and tight up against your body like that. Don't carry it out here like it's a loaf of bread. We don't need to lose a turnover battle. We can't afford to lose a turnover battle. So we win a turnover battle. We force turnovers, because I think we can force Case Keenum to make the mistakes, because this is a first playoff game for the Vikings with Case Keenum in quarterback. I don't think Case, when he was a backup in Houston, and he got the start, I don't believe he started any games for the Houston Texans. So I have a feeling.
I'm not certain. I do know that June of last year, I have mentioned this on the show last week.
Mm-hmm.
June of last year, the depth chart in oh Lord, what was the coach for the Rams?
Oh, Jeff Fisher.
Fisher. Start in July of last year was in no certain order. Keenum, Foles, and Goff, and those were for the first three seeds of the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
Down to two.
Yeah. Well, here, again, I don't think Keenum played when he was with the Texans. I don't think he was a quarterback who played against the Bengals. I could be wrong, but if he has any playoff experience, it's very, very limited. We've got to pressure Keenum, and that's my second game. Ball went out to Cam Jordan because Jordan imposed his will when he had to on Cam Newton. And Keenum's not nearly as mobile as Newton. He's not nearly as big or strong. If we can rattle Keenum, he will be inaccurate for our secondary. But if Keenum can sit there and pick his targets and just stand there and not feel any pressure, we're going to be in for a long day. Our secondary is good, but it's not going to be able to hold up coverage that long. We have to make Keenum be inaccurate throwing the ball, and that means a lot of pressure. Vikings offensive line, which has looked vulnerable, but I don't know how they're going to be with a week's rest. How many of these guys are healthy again? How many of these guys can protect Keenum as well as they did earlier in the season? Carolina beat them. Carolina beat them by running the football. They especially Jonathan Stewart got a lot of yardage against that defense. So Ingram's got to be big in this game. I know Kamara is going to be big with the screen passes and so forth, but Ingram's got to put his big boy Alabama pants on. Those guys, like his life depended on it, and get those tough yards and force those second and third and shorts. Not only get 1 or 2 yards a carry. He has to average 4 or 5 yards a carry for us to be successful against Minnesota. Last game, Ball, and this is two other guys who have to play big in this game, is I'm going to split it between Michael Thomas and Ted Ginn. Showed he was a speed threat. He's had a remarkable season for a guy who had a reputation as dropping a lot of passes. Hands, a lot of speed, but a lot of mistakes. He has looked every bit like Devery Henderson did when Henderson was towards the end of Henderson's time with the Saints. I mean, just a phenomenal, once I catch the ball, I'm gone kind of guy. A lot of critical catches over the middle. He drops right there and doesn't run anymore, but then he just, he does what he's supposed to do. And then Michael Thomas, my boy.
Yes.
The man is an animal, and he's just getting better. You need a first down. You need a big play. Find Michael Thomas. He's going to get you the ball. He's going to make the catch. I think they're still looking for Shaq Thompson's ankles on that one play near the sideline where Thomas hit the brakes. And you just see Thompson go sliding into the sideline, and then he picks up another 3 or 4 more yards afterwards. Mm-hmm. So, it's just Thomas is just a monster. And, I wish he got more touchdowns so he'd get more recognition as a big play threat like a Julio Jones. But as far as catching ability and catching radius, there's no receiver in the history of the Saints organization who's been a more consistent receiving threat than Michael Thomas. I know Marcus Colston. I watched Marcus Colston. I watched Eric Martin. I've seen those guys, but no one has been able to do what he's been able to do after the catch, since it's almost like he is Eric Martin's hands with Joe Horn's wiggle, speed, just his flair for the big catch that Joe Horn had. That's Michael Thomas. He's almost like a combination or an amalgam of Colston, Martin, and Joe Horn all combined into one. Just an amazing receiver, and I love watching him play. I love it. just love how he catches the ball. And it's always, there's never a question. Did he catch it? Did he not? No, he caught it. You can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has probably the strongest hands that I've seen
Absolutely.
in a receiver in years.
Absolutely.
I mean, when you see Michael Thomas catch the ball, he goes up, and it's not like fumbling with it all. When he goes up to catch the ball, he makes contact and he gets possession.
Mm-hmm.
Period. And that is
completely stops all motion. The ball is in his hand. There's no, pull back a little bit, or I got to reposition again. He grabs it, snatches it out of air, and pulls it in. And it's so much fun to watch him do that.
It is.
Again, like I said, when we got Drew Brees, I say this now, we got Michael Thomas. We've got one. You've always seen other teams have that guy, that one guy that you're like, God dang, what would that guy be like as a Saint? Because he's a killer we got one now. So it's fun. It's fun to watch. And Michael Thomas is going to have a good game, big game against Xavier Rhodes on him a lot. He has to be able to beat Xavier Rhodes. So, hey, man, listen, I know you got to go. You are
wait a minute.
Going to be on another show.
There's an announcement that I was supposed to make an hour ago that I just.
Yes, you were.
It is my distinct honor and privilege to announce to you guys. Let me put my business glasses on. Due to the diligence and hard work of myself, aim of Under the Dome podcast that Alan has with his knowledge. I'm sorry, I couldn't say that with a straight face. All jokes aside, I'm very pleased to announce to you guys that we have a very special guest coming on our show next week. Member of the Saints Hall of Fame, have former New Orleans Saint Tyrone Hughes is going to join us on Under the Dome next week. Hopefully breaking down the NFC Championship game. We are very, very honored that he accepted our invitation, and this means a lot to me. This is one of the guys that I really, really looked up to for a number of years, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Game balls, mine went Reggie Bush, Michael Thomas, and Cam Jordan. Dang.
And Sean.
I'm here, dude.
Oh, okay. It looked like you froze for a second. Okay.
I just sit real still.
Yeah. Okay. I got you.
I'm meditating on the job.
Okay. One last thing, and then we'll talk about what predictions for Sunday night. The Panther fans are talking a lot about the intentional grounding. They talk a lot about, some of the, I guess, calls they didn't like and that kind of stuff. But here's the thing that really stood out to me that I haven't read much from them, but I have read it from objective sources. Cam's eye injury, that looked more like a concussion to me. If y'all remember the play with Tyler Davidson where he almost sacks Cam Newton, and then when Newton escapes out of it, he goes right into the chest. He gets a chest full of David Onyemata and basically jams his helmet back. Well, here's the thing that got me. Okay, he falls straight back, lays on the turf, and then he kind of gets up. And he goes to the sideline, and then he collapses. That is the sign of a concussion. And they do a little spot check. Now, I know he said, the face mask thing he's got, the little visor he's got, The helmet got shoved and it kind of got in his eye or probably right above his eye, put a scar on or whatever like that. I understand that, but they do the quick trip to the tent and then he comes right back out. They don't go to the locker room. They don't do the proper protocol. So even if he doesn't have a concussion, I have a question whether or not they actually followed the correct protocol of bringing him to the locker room. Because my understanding of the rules since the Tom Savage incident, what Tom Savage did, as Larry Zonka puts it so delicately in the America's Game 72 Dolphins, he does the twitch where, the guy is concussed and he's shaking on the sideline. He did the twitch. That from happening again to the ground. And you act and look like you have a concussion. It's not a quick trip to the MASH tent and Hawkeye does the meatball surgery and you go right back out. You have to go to the locker room and have the full scale of tests. And it's because I think of the fact that this was a playoff game, and you and I both know if Derek Anderson has to finish that game, there is no comeback. There is no second. Olsen doesn't get that touchdown, and certainly Run CMC doesn't get his touchdown. That it's Pinata time on Cinco de Mayo with Derek Pinata because they're just going to tee off on that. So yeah, that bothered me a lot because I really thought that that Newton should have at least gone to the room for evaluation. Even if it wasn't concussed, you still should have followed the proper protocol, and that's very disturbing because that means in a critical game, Julio Jones, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, those kind of guys may not be treated, all animals created equally, but some animals are more equal than others, may not be treated properly. And just like with the 10-second runoff, that falls on the NFL officials. They need to make the call and say, look, you got to get this done. It just really makes a mockery of the concussion tests because of the importance of a playoff game. I'm watch this. I've just jinxed the Saints, and something's going to happen to a Saints player, and I'm going to be pissed off that they went to the locker room. But it's just one of those. More that I think should have happened.
So than I was in the first Atlanta game when they with
Kamara. You talking about when Jones hit Kamara?
Yeah. I don't think he was concussed at all. But, at that time, all that matters is what that referee thinks and what that referee does. Cam Newton was absolutely dealing with some sort of head trauma. Now, the depth or the degree of such, I'm not even going to begin to speculate on because I'm not Cam Newton. I don't know. It's almost like the three Stooges, the way that it's being dealt with, because it was his visor, it was his finger in his eye. The report comes out that purposefully knelt down on the sidelines to allow Derek Anderson enough time to warm up. How'd that work out for you? You threw it right to Cam Jordan. Good job.
Right. Well, the very fact that you knelt down and took that option, that's fine. If you want to give your quarterback your backup time to warm up. But guess what? That means you go to the locker room. Reads. You take a knee, you go down, then you have to go to the locker room for further evaluations. It's no quick trip to the MASH tent. You've got to go to the locker room after that. That's just the way it goes. Even if you're okay and you're in that first series, come back out afterwards, but you went through the protocol. Y'all can go back there and just, you look all right? Yeah, I'm all right. And then come right back out, but you need to go. You have to go. Anyway, That's just that
It
bothered
reminded me so much of the Secret Life of Pets. For a parent of a under 10-year-old, everything in life can be equated to an animated movie. And Kevin Hart's character, the cute little bunny rabbit in the Secret Life of Pets. Anyway.
Well,
that's too long a story to go into at this point.
at my age, everything in life can be equated to Seinfeld. Seinfeld is everything. But anyway, that's just me. Quick prediction. What do you think is going to happen Sunday? Make a prediction of what of a score, and where do you think this game goes?
I kind of wish I had a mohawk, because I would look into the camera and I'd go in the voice of Clubber Lang, go, Pain.
Yeah.
It depends, really. And I know this is beating around the bush and avoiding the question. They're going to have issues. This is not going to be the Carolina Panthers or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that they play on Sunday. They have to play almost error-free football to be able to pull this game out. Because say what you will about the Minnesota Vikings, they're a really good team. I don't want anyone operating under the mistaken impression that is going to be a rehash of the Week 1 matchup on Monday Night Football, because these are two very drastically different teams than what you saw in the opening weekend of the season. A guess, and probably going more on optimism than logical thought. I'll say 28-20 New Orleans.
Okay. Well, I don't have a good feeling about this game, just because I think the things we've been harping on all year, on third down, some of the breakdowns on defense, things are going to come back and haunt us. Also, the 18 players we've had on IR, and at least 10 of them are starters. I think that will finally come to have an impact on this game. These are just weaknesses this Saints team has. Playing in a tough venue like Minnesota, it's going to be very, very, very difficult for the Saints to win this game. I'm not saying they're not going to win, because what Minnesota has hanging over them is over 50 years of failure. Okay? They lost 4 Super Bowls. Since they lost that last Super Bowl, Super Bowl 11, to the Raiders, 12 was Dallas and Denver. They have made it to the NFC Championship game 4 more times and have lost all 4 times. They've had the best record in football. They've had the projected number. They've had the number 1 seed. They've had everything go for them. The rookie of the year setting records in Randy Moss. They've had everything that could possibly go for them happen, and they still fail to make the Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl. Okay? They've had Hail Marys, last-second field goals, overtime losses by field goals. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong for them. So I think if we stay close in this game, that dread, that feeling will just hang over the Vikings to an extent that they will make the mistakes, just like they did in 2009 with the turnovers and so forth, that will end up costing them the game. However, we have to be in a position to take advantage of mistakes. We have to be in a position to put that pressure on them. So that is my concern, that we can do that. I don't want this to be the kind of game where we're not getting blown out, we're hanging around. We're always within 8 or 9 points, maybe, of taking the lead, but we're not really in the game. Minnesota is in control the whole time. I don't want that kind of game to happen. I want it to be the kind of game either A, we're in control the whole game, or B, we are always within a realistic striking distance, within 3 points of taking the lead from them. If we're not in total control, and that's what we need to be able to do to win this ball game. It's going to be a close one. Somehow I feel that Lutz is going to be the difference in this game. Lutz may kick the game-winning field goal. We may miss a game-winning field goal or something like that, but Lutz is going to be a huge factor in this game. So if I had to make a prediction right now, I hate to say this, I hope I'm wrong, but I think the Saints lose this game, and they lose by 2 or 3 points. It's not going to be – I don't think they're going to go in there and get blown out. I don't think Minnesota's just going to steamroll them. I think this is just going to be one of those games where we can go back and look at and say, if we had these guys healthy, we probably would have done a much better job doing this. Or if we had a guy who could help us convert on third down to help us improve our third down conversion, we would have been able to do this. We would have been playing those what-if games. This team has grown up a lot in these past 16, 17 weeks since the first game of the season. They've become a much, much better team, grown up faster than we would have ever thought. Winning that home playoff game the way they did, you're in a great position. Let's see if they can win this game. If they can't win this game, it's not the end of the world, because this is a young team that's only going to get better. And Drew Brees is not showing the sign of any kind of age. We've got most of the core intact for next year to make another run next year, if we don't make it. But I'm hoping we do. I want us to go on, and I don't care where this NFC Championship game gets played. I'm not pulling for Atlanta because of that. I want Atlanta to lose because I don't want Atlanta anywhere near the playoffs or anywhere near the NFC Championship game, because my worst nightmare is having a replay of Super Bowl 51 with the Patriots and the Falcons in the game again. I can't pull for the Patriots a second time. I just can't. So go Saints, win the ball game, prove that I'm wrong, win it, and let's just play the NFC Championship game either at home against the Falcons or on the road against Philadelphia and go from there, because I think both teams we can beat. But we got this game as the game we have to win. This game is the game. It's the most important game right now. So we'll see. Next week, we'll have Tyrone Hughes on. We'll talk hopefully talk about good news that happened out of Minnesota. It'd be great if we have we go to Minnesota, then come back home for New Orleans again. That would be a great season. Let's just win this first game and see where the rest of it plays out from there. We'll do the postmortem in the game and preview the NFC Championship game and talk to Tyrone Hughes about his good old days with the Saints. Tyrone Fly, the daily double. We'll talk about his 2 kick returns against the Rams. He is one of the guys I really wanted the Saints to draft, too, back in 1993 out of Nebraska, because he was a local kid. But, I mean, we needed a kick returner, and he was a special one. So we'll talk to him about that and some other stuff. And, hey, guys, shoot us questions on our Twitter page, questions you want us to ask Tyrone Hughes, or questions you want us to talk about, or if we talk too much, what you want us not to say. So, anyway, follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome. I'm 79 Saints. Oh, Under the Dome 1, sorry. I'm 79 Saints. He is Drew's dad. What's the rest of the
3721.
3721. Drew's dad, 3721. And we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.